A show that tackles the big issues affecting the BVI and the rest of the Caribbean. Searches for answers to today's big questions and gives viewers a unique perspective on developing stories. Follow the big story with me, Kathy Richards, only on GTV. This show is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, Cyril B. Romney Tertola Pier Park, NV Salon Spa Nail and Barbershop, the Wellness Center, Medical and Behavioral Health Clinics, Tistley Cross Deliciously Smooth Cider, HOV Medical, and Digicel. Sign up for Digicel Plus Home Light Bundles, faster internet, movies, and sports. This is The Big Story. I'm Kathy Richards. I want to thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Wednesday morning. It's still very early in the year 2024, and we are dealing with a number of issues here in the territory. I want to this time welcome my guest for this morning, former legislator and the author director and visionary of the One VI agenda, Carvin Malone. I want to wish you all the best for 2024. It's been some time. I think our last time we sat here would have been in November.
Yes.
Or sometime around then. How are you? How has the new year find you?
I'm doing fine. First, I'd like to say a Happy New Year to the entire Virgin Islands, to the region, and indeed to the world, because 2024, I have it as a year of transformation, a year when we will get things done. So I look forward with great enthusiasm to the year 2024.
Okay, before we get to the meat of the matter, which is what we are facing here, as you would see, the headline says, looking at the governor's call for additional power. I would love for you to sum up, in your view, 2023.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, let me say a big thank you to the 2007 plus folks who saw it fit to actually vote for me in the last general elections. I don't think I had time to come back and formally say thank you to it.
I think you did, because I think
okay,
the
great.
last time we met was no, something. No, I might be wrong, but
okay,
too
great.
much thanks can never go wrong.
No, I think, Kathy, we met just before the elections, but I don't think we had a time to meet. So, well, I believe in the electoral process. I believe in the democratic process. And this is why I would say that I have a challenge with what is before us. But 2023, I will like to summarize it in terms of the entire 4 years in which I have the particular opportunity, the privilege, based on the 3,009 person back then that saw fit to actually elect me to the, it was then the third or fourth House of Assembly. Mm-hmm. So we are here today. Mm-hmm. And it is not by chance that we're here, because we have highlighted a number of issues that will be confronting us, and these will all play out in 2024. So we have to be ready for it. But if you don't mind, I would like to read 2 excerpts, because I always invite people to read. The first, the 2 excerpts will come from the memoirs of H.R. Penn. The fact is that a lot of what we faced today, folks don't understand why they have to continue to read, because histories tend to repeat itself, save for the fact that you know exactly what it is that you're facing, right? So I'm going to read some of this because it will lend texture to some of what we have to do. So will you bear with me?
Go right ahead.
Okay, good. This is from the memoirs of H.R. Penn. It says that in 1938, Mr. Hope Stevens, a native Tortolian, returned from the United States, where he had studied and became a lawyer. When he saw the depressed condition of the islands, both economically and politically, he decided to try to do something about it. One night, Mr. Penn says, he and Mr. David Fonseca, together with Charlie Georges and Jose O'Neill, came into my shop, and they tried to get me to join them to form a civic league, which will send a petition to the Secretary of State for the colonies. He refused. to join at that particular time. But Mr. Stevens went back, and he came back the other day, and he said to him, basically, I have been thinking about what you've said, that you are interested in economic movement, improvement of the territory, and he convinced him that if you have the political freedom in terms of getting a legislative council returned to the Virgin Islands, then the economics will follow. He said he joined the very same day. So the Civic League was set up that very same night. Mr. David Fonseca, president, Mr. C.W. Georges as vice president, J.R. O'Neill as secretary, and myself, Mr. Penn, as treasurer. Now the other part is what you have to understand. The Civic League prepared a petition addressed to the Secretary of State for the colonies, requested an elected legislative council for the British Virgin Islands. And we all busied ourselves collecting votes and doing whatever we had to do. It failed. That particular petition failed at the time. That very night, Mr. Georges had resigned the following day after the forwarding of the petition to London, claiming that repercussions from this matter were damaging his father's business. His father, J.W. Georges, the biggest merchant in the BVI at the time and the sole unofficial member of the Executive Council. So there you have the first particular reading. So you bring this forward, and people will basically punish you for even thinking about it. The other one is when we tried the first time to have full ministerial government in 1959. I went to London as part of a delegation for constitutional talks with the Secretary of State for the colonies. The delegation was comprised of the administrator, Mr. Alsbrook, Mr. Malone, this is Leslie Malone, as member for Trade and Production, Mr. Fonseca, as member of Works and Communications, and myself, representing the loyal opposition. Mr. Malone and Mr. Fonseca wanted a full ministerial system of government, whilst the general public in the BVI and a majority of the members of the Legislative Council did not consider that the time was ripe for this move. Many people feared, and this is important, many people feared that this might lead to dictatorial powers, and I had been elected by the majority of the council to represent their views. So there you have it. So the fear of leadership of our people by your people is nothing new.
I get where you're coming with that. Given the situation where we face the Legislative Council of the Virgin Islands being jeopardized, with the governor having additional powers.
That's correct.
And you have some people in the territory who says this should happen.
Yes.
And you're having the other side that's saying this should not happen.
That's correct.
And so we bring it back to these scenarios that would have been there from decades ago. But before we get deep into that, I dare say, just reviewing some of the interviews that we would have done in the past, that Carvin Malone, you called this.
Yeah.
You call this, and in some people's mind, they would say black tongue. The situation that we currently face is one that you thought was heavily likely to happen because of the circumstances that you. If you could recap a bit on those scenarios.
Okay, great. Well, let us just say that the handwriting basically is on the wall, because I have been following this since 2012. In April of 2012, I think it was, we signed a protocol for effective financial management that gave a deadline of December 2015 to have certain things put in place, or else UK will want additional measures put in place. We did not meet those particular deadlines. So I've been harping ever since then that if we fail to get these things done, we will, in fact, be causing additional measures to be placed on the people of the Virgin Islands. So, well, I used to say it sarcastically, probably, that you got to gather your popcorn, because we had witnessed what had happened in Turks and Caicos. We had witnessed what had happened in Caymans. There were some occasions, even in Bermuda, where the airport were to be expanded. and they had to come in, step in, and then do different things and so forth. So we were in the throes of all of this experience around us. So I said, well, if we want to avoid any further interference, so to speak, and I don't know how you interfere with what is yours, we are colonies. We are colonies.
A lot of people have a really big problem being referred to
you can
us being referred
call
to as
it
a
by
colony. What constitutes the Virgin Islands a colony?
An overseas territory of the UK that have a colonial or a particular constitutional order is a colony.
So when you compare that to what is being touted a lot as our democracy is being threatened, how can a colony have their democracy?
Well, you cannot have a situation, as I mentioned from way before, where you have a constitutional order that could be varied, suspended, amended, without your consent. This is what can happen. This is what the constitutional order that order in council is about amendment to your particular constitution without your particular say. So although we have all of this important, I would not minimize the importance of a constitutional review. But the fact is that we have instances, immediate instances, where the constitution order is being amended by an order in council. And the reason why I don't even dive deep into the 48 is because I mentioned in June 15th, when I appeared before the Constitution Review Commission, I told them that this should have been a review of governance over the years as opposed to order in council, because there were no specifics in it. They were just going to look at everything. And I dare you to say that if anyone come and look into every aspect of your life, they will find things and so forth. But should it be married to your constitution being suspended? I said before, I said during, and I said now. No, it is wicked, it's wrong, and it should not be tied to it.
Whether it be in part or totally?
In part or in whole.
Okay, so help us to understand this, Mr. Malone. Many persons, what we've been hearing from both politicians and persons who have that knowledge of constitution and the modus operandi of governments, the understanding that we're getting, and it seems to be a little confusing for the layman who does not really go deep into these studies like you would do, and hence you being here. As it is with the governor's power, he has it within his purview, within his ability, within legal rights to invoke certain things. He can, though he does not have stated the power to manage the public service, he has powers that he could go and use. He can go and actually do that.
Yes.
Why then order in council? Why then a request for additional powers? What is the difference? We struggle to understand that.
Well, okay, fine. Well, we will go through some of these nuances because it is to let the public be fully educated in terms of it, right? The powers of the governor, they have 5 subjects of which he is specifically responsible for, yeah? And in his conversation, he was saying that folks are saying he's responsible for the civil service. The reason why they're saying it is because it is so. The Constitution gives him the particular right in order to get this done. Listen very carefully.
Okay, go on, and then I'll share this with you.
Okay, fine, good. Because if you have a particular set of employees and you cannot discipline that particular person, and I'm not saying the civil service need discipline, I'm just saying if you have a group of employees and only you can hire them, only you could fire them, only you could put them on leave, only you could dismiss them, then who is in charge? You are in charge because you have you can put a permanent secretary in a position even if the minister decided we don't want that person there. You cannot remove them unless the governor said we will will actually replace you. You can make the recommendation, but the ultimate power is yours.
So the governor said, and I directly went for that code because I did write it down. The governor says he's in charge of the terms and conditions of public service, but the powers of direction and control lies with the minister. Are we to understand that the governor does not necessarily understand, or it is that legislators do not understand, or on both sides we are confused? Just as this is being said, those were the direct words of the governor.
Well,
listen to what you just said. Yeah. It gives us the impression that somebody really don't understand what.
Well, you can orchestrate a confusion, you know. So the whole thing is this, right? The civil service, in terms of who bears responsibility, was one of those items that came up in the constitutional review that was being conducted in 2005. Mm-hmm. When it went to the UK, there were those who felt that it should remain as is. And there were those who felt that unless you put it under the powers of the elected members, then you will have no change in terms of the particular direction that the civil service will go. It did not change from where it was, from ways back. So it remained under the special power of the governor. The Constitution has it. So you could split hair about it as to whether or not which is a lifeline that you hold on to. The fact is that you could only get hired through the governor's office. You could only get moved through the governor's office. You could only get replaced through the governor's office. Yes, somewhere in the middle, if I need a particular action taken, I'm going to come straight to you. But if you don't do it, I can't fire you. Well, who is responsible? And if I'm wrong, of course, it will be corrected. You could only be hired through the governor. You could only be fired through the governor.
And that is what we've been hearing all along.
You could only be replaced in terms of moving to whether it's a lateral. What it seems as if you can't do is demote you. Even the governor can't just demote you from where it is. We have about 20 civil servants that are particularly held in abeyance. They are out there because they were accused of some wrong or the other. They're out there. Even if the politician want them in the office tomorrow, they cannot do it. The governor will have to have that instructed. So who's in charge?
We're still confused.
Well, I don't know why, because I'm saying you have...
But the governor is saying otherwise.
Well, okay, when you put it to him again, ask him specifically, who can hire, who can fire, who can put on suspension, and who could return from suspension.
Okay. All right, so we'll move off a little bit from that and come closer to what we are faced with. What some are branding ordering council in disguise, where the governor is now seeking to have additional powers. Why is he seeking this? Because in his fifth report on the review of the implementation of the recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry, the government has been very slothful in terms of moving towards a May 2024 deadline. He has also said that he is going to be recommending a further extension to November. Now, Honorable Carvin Malone, I think to some extent you were around within the legislative framework when that all started. Give us your review of that process, coming from the very beginning when the decision was made for a XYZ deadline to complete the implementation of over some 48 recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry.
Well, let's go further back than that.
Okay.
Okay, great.
All right.
And on January 20th, when the past Governor Jahphix came into the territory, in fact, I had to sign him in because we were under lockdown. Not actually lockdown, but we were in the throes of
the COVID,
and we had to allow people who were not from here to be things. So I had to sign him in. He came in, and he came in with the particular commissioner, purporting that he was a judge of the particular course. I found out that he was not. It was to do this particular job. Yes?
Are we talking about
Hickenbottom? Yes, right.
Okay, let's use some names so we can all be very clear.
That's right, Hickenbottom. And history will tell you that on the 19th, this very issue was debated or introduced to the House of Commons by the then Dominic Raab, who had stated that this territory is just rifled with gun moving and drug trafficking, and they had to do something about it. There were pictures that went into the British press less than complimentary, very uncomplimentary pictures, and different storylines that came in. When this was announced back in January when these governors are moving have a special place. You always have to be mindful of Januaries after the third year. So it came then, and I said then that this is a done deal, because remember, I'm telling you, I have been following this since 2012. I said to the people of the Virgin Islands, this is a done deal. You cannot conduct this non-focused commission of inquiry within a 6-month period. So this is just a report waiting to be written, and they have to conduct a few interviews so that they can put on record that we have found A, B, C, D. So the 6 months from June was extended. First, I think it was to November or whenever it was. And then it was extended to be completed by February of the other year. Still, the evidence that was being sought did not show itself. So there was no compelling reason. There was none then, there's none now, to institute an order in council to amend, remove, in part or in whole. So this already written order in council was without basis. They were going then, when it was finally delivered again, just like I don't know why the Constitution Review is not given out. Mm-hmm. This was received sometime
November.
In November, no. This particular report of the commission was received in January. But there was a timeline for it to be released yes. Sometime later down.
Yes.
Because they had to wait on a specific action.
Please say what you have to say, because we all recall what happened between January and it was April.
April.
One of the things that
and it was not to be released until
because its knees.
They had it. They were not going to release it until June. But then, come the arrest of the former premier in April. And bags were packed. Plane flights were booked. And within a 48-hour period, you are here because you must get this report out now. When everyone in the territory, or the excitement of this, would lead it. I called it a coup d'etat, and I got blows for it because folks either didn't understand it or don't want to understand it, right? Because it changed the whole scope of things. The seat of minister was not mine, so I could be placed anywhere. But what happened and what transpired, history would recall that within a very short time, the government of national unity was formed. Within a very short time, they were given a particular mandate or an ultimatum to get these recommendations timelined. The premier stated for the first time, accurately, that he was pressured to get it.
Under duress.
Under duress, he called it. He was pressured to get it out. In fact, first copy came, they say, you got to be crazy. You're not committed to doing this thing. Go and tighten it up. Second copy came. You got to be mad. You're not serious. On the third, I think it was on the fourth time that they say, okay, fine. we could live with this. Okay? You can orchestrate a confusion from the very beginning, the outcome of which you know, and so forth, right? So at the end of the day, but the reason why I am saying, and I said to the commission on the 15th of June, that we as a people will benefit from almost all of the recommendations made, because on our journey to self-determination, we must improve our transparency, we must improve our accountability, and we have to put things in order. I introduced to the House some additional measures that are required for the Constitution Review Commission, so that, if passed, this will give the people of the Virgin Islands more confidence in governance of our people by our people.
You jumped apart.
Okay, fine.
A government of national unity was formed.
Yes, right.
And what scenario that created now?
Well, here you are. The particular scenario is that you had the opposition members who were advocating certain particular measures, and I cannot question the authenticity of anyone in terms of making sure it happened, because we were, just like the COVID, we were placed in a position we've never been before. Yes? So, but I always felt, I could not know, I always felt that this whole commission of inquiry was never about whether or not grandma who's 88 years old, 90 years old, get $200 and should only get one, get $200 and should get five. I never felt that some of these particular areas that the Constitution allowed us to get into, that they're now being rolled back. Because you look only in the U.S. and you see that a lot of the gains of the 60s are now being rolled back, and so forth. No less here, and so forth. I never felt that because I did not declare that I owned a car or a piece of land somewhere, and because I did not record it, I should lose my Constitution as a result of it. These are unmeasured stuff. These are stuff that should not be part of why you lose your Constitution. Because I will tell you that we had this particular situation all over the world. So here you have the government of national unity. I sat on the backbench, so to speak, and we do. But my only criteria for staying on the backbench was that we have to keep the people of the Virgin Islands fully informed, educate them as to what pressures we as a people are facing, what demands are being placed. Not that we could avoid them, so to speak, because you have to be resolute in terms of the result of saying no.
So you stayed in so that you could get information, so that you could better articulate to those who do not understand or have that opportunity to hear.
I stayed in so I can help those in charge, the actual premier of the day, the deputy premier of the day, and all of those on the front bench, because you don't want to be talking one voice in the back and have another voice coming from the front. So at the end of the day, then those who were charged with addressing the public are the ones. Because you see, I believe in democracy. And if 5 of us sit in the room and it says the majority wins, then I am not, if I'm the 2, I'm not going to come out and talk about I wasn't for it.
Okay.
But those there do it. So you have to understand the system of governance in which we have. And if you don't like it, then get out of it or have it changed.
Okay, but then you moved over to the opposition.
Yes, because I did not feel, I said it, and the records will show that I said it. I moved over because there were key facts concerning what was taking place that cannot and should not be kept a secret. I don't care what paper you sign and so forth, because at the end of the day, we're talking for the generation. I talk about H.R. Penn, 1938, 1959, 1967, 1971, all these particular areas, right? And there's a generation to come. Because we, by chance, live within a 3-generation gap, all of us. If, by luck of age, you probably will hit 4 generations, where you have your great-great-grand, your great-grand, your grand, and the children of the children, right? And so forth. So I was actually researching this, so I could tell you that a generation is normally figured as 25 to 30 years.
Okay. Okay.
Okay? 30, 60, 90. Okay, so yeah. There is a book that by actually Andrea, who talks of the golden gems, my golden gems, right? And so forth. And when you look at the folks who make it beyond 90, they're few. 80 to 90, they expand. Most people don't even make it to 80. Okay? So this is a reality. This is not something I am making up. So 2 to 3 generations is what you will most likely be a part of. And those are special. We actually celebrated 104, I think it was, years of Miss Enid and everything. Yes. Only a few people live to be those particular age. But we're back today. So our particular journey, and I think one of the legislator from the 3rd district said it best yesterday. Where we go as a people is not yours to demand. You are where you are today with your freedom of speech and your freedom to move and your education because of the battles of these people. And where are you going to leave it for those to come? You're going to take us back to 1949. You're going to take us back to 1901, 1902, when the Constitution was suspended, because you don't like a specific person.
All right, so we come back to the chronological order of what has brought us to where we're at. Now, we're into the thralls now from where our discussion is, into the review of the Constitution, yes, where you got even deeper.
Yes. Well, the review of the Constitution is very critical because, as I'm saying, although the Privy Council, the House of Commons, and the King could do all of these measures without any consultation, but it is fitting so to have it. But you have a duplicitous act being carried on since 1945. I thought you'd never ask me why I say that.
that was like a rhetorical statement that you were just make there.
Okay, good. The UK and other members of the United Nations signed on after 1945 that there shall be no more colonial holdings. That all of those territories that are territories of an administrating state should not be any further. A lot of countries took the opportunity, and there were a number that did not. So in 1960, they then came with another United Nations pronouncement that these are the measures that will constitute a non-self-governing state. And come 1962, they set up a body to educate the people as to what non-self-governing mean. And these are the 3 choices we give you. Either become an associate of another administrating power, you become integrated into it, or you come in a unitary, I think it is, state in terms of independence, so to speak, with the king right now as the head of state and so forth, right? And then those that went to republic status, that they have their own people, their own particular guidelines. The king is not the head of state of these. Barbados is the last one, or the latest one, in order to go republic, right? But here you have it. The review of the Constitution, we had about 5 or 6 reviews. There was the one in 1950, of course, and women for the first time could vote in the Virgin Islands with the review that made, I think it was 64 or in 62, that was done. Then you had the Legislative Council coming into effect in 67. Then you had a 72 report. Then you had a 2000 and there was a 77 one, which basically, I think it was either 77 or 95, that ushered in the at-large system.
Okay.
But that was an interim particular report as opposed to one where you have a full-blown constitution. And then when we met in 2005, I happened to have had the privilege of being nominated by the late Honorable O'Neill to sit on that particular body. And the feeling at that particular time, and I think it was the Labour who had introduced it, the Labour government in the UK had introduced it at the time because they were more towards upholding what was decided by the United Nations, giving more autonomy to the people of the Virgin Islands. So we were, at that time, allowed then to frame the terms of reference. We were allowed, this was the House of Assembly, or the Legislative Council at the time, was allowed to frame the terms of reference. We were allowed to choose the particular members. Honorable Ferrara, Justice Ferrara, was the one who headed
QC,
that, QC, that particular commission. So all of what you see today, the DPP, the Attorney General, a lot of the measures that were introduced and passed was as a result of the then UK government feeling that the time is right to advance the cause of self-determination. And it was to prepare us for that. The particular conservative government have a different view. We are stronger together, we're better as one, and we will tweak the Constitution in ways that will make you feel better.
And so that you would stay.
That you will stay.
You would not go for republic independence, you would stay under a colonial rule.
That's correct, and so forth, right? So when those measures are understood, when you see the evolution of this and the rollback of some of what was gained, you cannot be comfortable. There's no way you could be feeling comfortable with the rollback that was envisaged and so forth. The actual premier always remind you that his grandfather was the one who got us out of grant and aid. I think it was 74, either 74, 84, and so forth. The Romneys will remind you that it was their dad who helped to usher in the whole concept of the financial services, because we were left for dead back then. When the double taxation treaty was actually wiped away, we did not know exactly where we were going to go. So in terms of the review, we cannot sit and accept any rollback. We should be going forward. This is what the One VI agenda is all about, to making sure that we can then do those measures that are required, no matter who accepts it or not, because we will be spinning top in mud if we try to get this done without coming to grip with the fact that you have to gain the confidence of our people, of leadership of our people, by our people.
Okay.
It could only be done if they feel, well, I don't know how it could be done, but it must be done, because in 1959, our people said that we cannot give those guys a full legislative powers because they're going to become dictators.
Okay. So
I wasn't around because I was born on June 12, 1959. Okay. So it couldn't be me they were talking about.
Okay. So now this particular review was completed. It was submitted to governor and the government, I think, in November.
Yes.
All along, we would have surpassed the 25% mark of recommendations to start putting into action. Out of that percentage was that of the constitutional review. This sat with those entities, both the governor and the government, from since November. The concerns are now that why this would have been taking the government such a long time to push that into action. We also hear the governor talk about not being able to have into effect any other significant amount of recommendations for over six to 8 months period. I think it was 6 months. This would have been an ample one in our view that could have come forward and added. But more than that, looking at the realities of things, it's been said some applauds are being given that with the unity government, those over 25% of recommendations were able to come into force, and the others being left in some sections. The government is explaining that it's the more difficult ones that were left now to be implemented, and we hear of the excuses of having to pause because of elections and what's not. We also hear from Mrs. Igwe Stout that in fact, there are quite a number of other recommendations that are to the point of just fine tweaks to be done, and on recommendations that would have come from UK and others as well, to say, just hold a little bit for X, Y, Z to happen, and then they're going to go in force. But before all of this could happen, we're hit with the governor on his exit debut, coming with this new order.
Okay, well, let me be straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
I said in January of 21, I think, when this particular issue came up, right? When the past Governor Jahphix had his particular fly-in with a hail of glory with this particular commission of inquiry, I said then that no matter what we do, it is a done deal.
So we're hearing this done deal very often. You would have said with Jasper a done deal. We're hearing with the,
no matter what
this
the government
one,
do, no matter what the government do, because I call it the proverbial cows in the roads and so forth, right? We have a number of issues, and I think that I heard a broadcast this morning, not a broadcast, but a particular pronouncement by one of the former civil servants. He was saying on his site that we have to find out what is it that the UK truly want.
Do you know?
Of course not, and they will never say.
Mm-hmm.
When they reach there, then they will actually do it. So you'll be fighting and putting recommendations. You will put in recommendations to counter the recommendations that you put before, so, without any guidance as to whether or not you're reaching a particular endpoint. Let me just say again, we have the open registry that the UK and the EU are hoping for us to have. Unless they get that, they will keep putting pressure on until they can do it themselves. They don't want to unilaterally open it. December 31st was the deadline they had given for unabated, unrestricted, open registry. So you have to follow these things, because you see, these things don't happen in isolation. I call them the proverbial cow in the road, or overturned car, and you don't see anything as to why it's there, except you are overturned. This is one of them. The particular world powers are somehow feeling that we have all of their particular tax dollars here, and they want it open. It started when we were talking in terms of getting this tax exchange agreements. If you do 10, you're okay. We did 12. If you do 25, you're okay. We did 30. If you do 100, you're okay. We did 150. So we kept all the rules, but the gold post shifts all the time. One, you're talking about same-sex marriage. They reckon that they have it under legislation, and it should and must be passed. I think they instituted it in Cayman, if I'm not...
and I'm not quite
okay.
sure.
But one of the legislation, they went in and they had it done. So all of these measures that the governor speaks of wanting to bring into the House itself, you would be surprised that none of them will be new, other than what they have mentioned before. They want to make sure that anyone, once they're here 12 months or more, have the right to run for office, hold office, unrestricted. Immigration. You can pin them out. We're going to pretend as if we haven't heard it before. But unlike that, I don't put them aside, because if they don't accomplish it by one means, they're going to get it by all means necessary.
So the governor, when he would have sat on his press conference, he did say one of the powers that he would
to introduce legislation.
To introduce legislation. He did not go into details which legislations he ironed, but the learned
I have the list.
You have the list.
Yes.
I really didn't want to laugh.
I have the list.
Yes. But what were we seeing, and we're hearing from both sides of the aisles? We're coming down on an hour, so we got to go a little fast on this. What we're seeing and hearing on both sides of the aisles, this is not something that any of the legislators want to see, that the governor is given that power where he can just bring a legislation to the House. And remember, according to how the Constitution is, once a legislation goes to the House, the governor is the one who passes it. So he could bring it and then he could just pass it whether or not. That's my understanding.
Well, that is the correct understanding, and you cannot get any more powers unless you amend the Constitution. So what I'm saying, they are seeking, without saying it, you say backdoor, I say straight up, they're seeking to amend the amendments that they had, because the current order in council calls for a wipe out of the House of Assembly, it calls for a wipe out of cabinet, it calls for a wipe out of any measure that you have to consult with any office in the Virgin Islands at this time. That's what that current order in council does. So he wants to leave in some and take back some. So he wants to amend the amendment.
But when you say wipe out,
well,
if I recall the
dismiss
order
them.
The order in council was to suspend in part.
Yeah, dismiss the House of Assembly, dismiss the actual cabinet, dismiss any recommendations that have to come from the Premier, dismiss any recommendations that have to come from the AG, dismiss any recommendations that have to come from anyone. And the governor will be given the power not only to introduce, but to pass it right away under the current order in council that exists. So he is seeking to, quote unquote, don't put this on the next governor, because come the end of January, he's gone. So all of these powers is not for him.
Well, it's the office of the governor.
Yeah, so I am saddened when it will be said that the UK knows nothing about what I will recommend, and I will seek to have it approved.
I'm now going to write for these. Okay, so you also are of the opinion that this was a done deal from a long. And
how else could it be?
Because as well, our minds are brought back to when Lord Goldsmith would have said in his statement to the governor, you can also ask for whatever you need. Mm-hmm. And this is part of that. Honorable Malone, the honorable will still come out. It's just recent. What the government was able to do back then in the initial stage, when the report on the Commission of Inquiry came out, it had as its top recommendation to suspend the Constitution in part of the Virgin Islands. Yes. The government, say hot, say cold, were able to negotiate to not have that done. The top recommendation now with this, what persons are now seeing as another type of order in council, the top one is to have the powers to bring legislations to the House of Assembly to have them passed. Yeah. Do you have the confidence in our legislators that sit right now to negotiate out of this?
Well, yes, they just have to hold one head, and I'm glad that eventually the particular opposition members were able to join forces in terms of solidarity with the particular government. I will go on record as saying there was absolutely zero reason why they could not meet as one body on Tuesday. Sorry, on Monday.
For the press conference.
For the press conference, yeah. Because it is what the country needs now. It is bigger than you, bigger than I, bigger than everyone.
A show of that solidarity.
A show of that solidarity. So they need to get together and demonstrate it properly. not waiting, not hiding behind a proverbial banana tree to see how the crowd feels, and then you will come and then, adjust your motions to fit the crowd. This is no crowd-pleasing moment. I respect that you like me, but I'd rather like that you respect me.
So the next move, as we would have heard in that most recent press conference, and that was with the opposition, that they look forward to the emergency sitting now of the House of Assembly, where they all will be in one space, and they kept reiterating, we are in solidarity on this.
Yeah, and so forth, because I later learned that you did have members of government who made that suggestion, and it was announced yesterday, by a member of the opposition. I don't care how we get here. The fact is that we have to sit in one accord and actually do it. And when these measures, the particular cry is immediate. Get that Constitution report released to the people now. Don't hold it. It's not yours. I don't know how to say it, because I am saying that there's absolutely zero reason why a report that you waited all of this time come November, it was given to you, get it out now so that the people could understand. I want to see whether some of those measures that were voted down in the House, when I introduced them as being part of the terms of reference, it was voted down. Not because they were wrong, but because I happened to have been on the other side at that particular time. Oh. You have to stop that. If it's right, no matter who brings it.
Okay. So looking forward, and I know it's your wish to see that nothing but the best come out of this. But looking forward, where do you see the territory going? Let's give two scenarios. The government, the House of Legislators, the body, however it is constituted, to make sure that we negotiated out of giving the governor his wishes. Where do you see the territory going? And added to that, would an extension of deadline to November be sufficient to say, let's get 98% of those recommendations complete and put into motion?
My views haven't changed. Whether you put the recommendations in for November 2024 or you put them in for June 2025, my views are going to stay the same.
And what is that?
My view is that while the UK is doing all of what they need to do to get done what they need to have done, we as a people have to ready ourselves through education, through the referendum process, to go in terms of that self-determination particular. I would not, I'll go on record, I will not be marching to tell the United Kingdom how much they should love me. We have to go the route of self-determination. Even if the UK, and they'll be the most obvious choice, are the ones who we have as our administrating partners. We could only have an equal seat at the table if we have our own constitution. We cannot be a colony and tell others how they should administer their territory. It is their territory to administer. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. The fear of knowledge, I wrote in my piece on my site the other day, the fear of knowledge is what's crippling us. We are the only one who don't have confidence in ourselves. The world over have confidence in the BVI, but BVI don't have confidence in itself. I am not saying it. It was said here back in 1959.
But you are believing it as well.
We can do it. The people of the Virgin Islands have to wake up to the fact that we are going to be pushed in that direction. Now, we could either direct how it is going to happen, or we can have it forced on us. But we should not confine the other generations to come to be in this same spot talking about we can do it. Look at what Malone said back on, what's today's date, the 9th? What? Look at what,
the 10th?
Yeah, 10th. Look at what Malone said back on the 10th of January, that our people are afraid of knowledge, or people are afraid to take the other step. We have no choice.
I'm still trying to understand your take of that. You will not march to tell the UK what.
No, because I will march to tell them that self-determination and the referendum process is what we need.
Okay.
So we can't just stop by telling them, tell the governor, don't do it.
Okay.
Because that comes
so
with a price.
You should march for more.
Yes, you have to march for more.
And you were saying to the people of this territory, we should be on the streets.
We should be on the streets for more.
Okay.
We cannot be on the street just, there's no half-baked cake. The cake is either baked or not, and so forth, right? So we cannot be on the street talking about, if they love us a little more, we could accept you. Why should they?
I think we will take it down on that note. Why should there? And there is a lot to ponder, and I dare say, while ponder, there are a lot to be done by legislators, by the learned, by the people of the territory to move on. The territory has not been the same since the Commission of Inquiry. And we would have heard that from other places that would have experienced a similar. People are convinced that once you give an inch, a yard is going to be taken.
Yes, because as the end of the day, and I will end on this note and so forth, right? We have come a long way. Our forebears have struggled. They have, and I think one of the members said it yesterday, our forebears have struggled. They have given us all of what is required for us to be self-determined. There's no nation that could stand on its own. So no matter what you do, this is why the United Nations were formed and so forth. We cannot be a part of that because we are a colony. We cannot do certain things. We cannot look in grant and aid from the EU because we are a colony. It has to go under the UK. We cannot do certain things in the state in which we are at. If we sell ourselves to loans and to extensions by loans and so forth, then we will be compromised, and then we have to, another set of impediments come into our particular way, whether it's private or not, because per capita I probably am the most leveraged person, well, other than some of my other partners that I know. But the fact is that the loan guarantee, we didn't get to touch that at all.
Yes,
and so forth, right?
Time.
Because if you go the route where the folks who are going to loan you the money can pull your strings and you have to march to the beat because you sign off on it, well, you're in a worse position. Don't come tell me about St. Kitts is ahead of us, St. Vincent ahead of us, Antigua's ahead of us. They have their struggles.
And that we know. I'm really sorry that we have to bring it down at this moment. I want to thank you so much for taking time out to come. We know that there are other areas that we could talk for another hour, but you will be back and we will continue this conversation because it's a must. And I want to thank you for tuning in for this edition of The Big Story. I'm Kathy Richards.
We know that where you choose to bank matters, and it is your vote on what your funds do in strengthening our community. As your official Bank of Paradise, we invest and support the lifeblood of our economy by helping in the realization of personal goals for homeownership, education, and entrepreneurial visions, which support small businesses. We make it our place to connect with persons and worthy causes, and we have been doing so for more than 30 years. Where your money goes and what your dollars empower are your choice. And we thank you for choosing us, a bank that gives where it matters the most, for you, for our community, and a happier tomorrow. The National Bank of the Virgin Islands.
Everyone looks to the future, but no one truly knows what the future holds.
The number of people under the age of 20 with type 2 diabetes could increase by 49% by 2050. Let it be known that we all have a 30% chance of developing hypertension.
Globally, more than 300 million people of all ages suffer from depression.
More than 60,000 young adults aged 20 to 39 are diagnosed with cancer each year. Obesity leads to problems such as stroke, heart disease, and kidney failure.
No matter your race, age, or color. We are all at risk.
These diseases can be managed or prevented if caught early.
But with the right medicine and the right doctors to keep us on a path to live a robust and healthy life,
we will live well.